if we have this awareness and we're willing to surrender and to let go and let God. And so this is where I really wanted to hone in on the idea of people losing their jobs right now. And so people, when we lose our jobs, right, or when we lose something in our life, the knee-jerk reaction could be to panic, right? To panic because we feel like the supply has been cut off. But that is an illusion. Our job is not the source. Life is our source. All right. So let's jump into the law of supply. So the law of supply is a really important law. So, and the reason that the law of supply, I think, is so important right now, right? So many people have lost their jobs. So many people are going through uncertain times. And so the law of supply, we want to recognize that there's one supply, and that is life breathing us. So whether we choose to call our higher power God, if we don't like the word God, we can call what the life breathing of us source, universe, life, whatever name we give this energy, that is ultimately our supply. And so sometimes we get confused and we think that our job is source, right? But it's one source. So it's so important as we're navigating life to recognize that the ultimate source, the ultimate supply is life breathing us. And we want to lean into abundance. So when we go out to nature, I mean, you can see nature behind me, right? The trees. I love this like spring weather because just a couple of months ago, there were no leaves in the back. Now with the rain, we're getting beautiful rain today with these, all this beautiful rain. It's an abundance. Nature is just growing and there's so much supply. There's so much supply. And the challenge is when we agree with scarcity, but we're going to dive into that more. So we want to only agree with abundance. We don't want to make any agreement with lack. And it's important to recognize that we become that which we seek, which we focus on, right? And it's so important to always be grateful, but never to be satisfied. And we're going to dive into this more as well. So this is a really amazing topic that we're going to cover today. And so agreeing only with abundance. So we live in an abundant universe. So as I mentioned, in nature, when we go out in nature, we're not like, oh my gosh, where are all the trees, right? Unless like we plow them down, right? But if we let just nature go, it's just going to start taking over everything. Nature knows no bounds. It just continuously flourishes and grows, and it's bountiful, right? And so abundance is the most natural thing in the world. And our task as humans is to align our thoughts with truth. And so when we think about nations that are starving, there's scarcity, it's because their thinking doesn't know anything else, right? And so it's not that the land can't provide enough food. It's that that there's not enough supply. There's plenty of supply. It's just a matter of using our mindset, using our thoughts to see the potential and the opportunity that's right there before us. And so I know that even with what I'm saying, there's probably some paradigms coming up, right? Like, yeah, but what about this? Or yeah, what about that? That's exactly what I'm referring to. It's that limited thinking. That limited thinking keeps us within the confines of where we're already operating in. right? So we talked about our thermostat, our internal thermostat, and that essentially allows us, that determines our internal thermostat is controlled by our paradigms, which is in our subconscious. And we programmed our subconscious from the moment we entered this world up until now. And as we are moving forward, our thermostat is determining, and we're going to dive into this deeper in conversation today, but it determines how successful we can be, how much money we can make, how deep our and rewarding our friendships can be, how much love and romance we can allow in our lives, how much wealth and abundance we can allow in our lives, how much riches and success we can allow in our lives, right? How much health we can allow in our lives. And so the thing is that if we crack open those limited beliefs and allow ourselves to align with abundant thinking, then the sky, I mean, the sky, I say the sky is the limit, but there really is no limit. There really is no limit. And so we want to create thought forms in which truth flows. And truth, abundance is truth. Right. And so we want to pay attention to our thinking, because when we're starting to think lack and scarcity, that's what's going to flow into our life. There's an abundance of scarcity and lack if that's what we want to focus on. And so our task is to unkink the hose and to allow abundance to flow in. And there's many different kinks in our hose, right? So as we've worked together in the past, we've worked through forgiveness, right? Because we want to let go of resentment, right? So scarcity can be in forms of resentment, right? It can be in forms of fear, doubt, negativity, negative thinking, limited paradigms, limited thoughts. And so as we clear out all of these kinks, that's where abundance can really flow. All right. So some questions that we can ask ourselves is, what is an area of your life, right? And you generally speaking, where there is an opportunity to agree with abundance? And maybe there's many areas, right? Because even if we feel a lot of love in our life, we can even turn it up even more, right? And so we wanted to look at it. How is love in our life? How is it showing up? How is money showing up in our life? How is creative expression or health, right? How are all these showing up in our life? And so if there's a particular area that is standing out as wanting your attention right now and wanting to improve, right? And we've talked about in the past that life gets our attention through longing and discontent. And so imagine, I love to use the hammock metaphor of we're laying on a hammock. It's a beautiful 70 something day. We're in the shade. There's a nice breeze and we're completely content. We don't want to move. We're just enjoying the moment. And then what happens? We realize we're a little thirsty. And then we start thinking, oh man, I'm really thirsty actually. Oh, wow. Didn't I just see them making some frozen drinks up at the bar over there? Oh, I'd love a frozen drink. Now we are not content on that hammock, right? We want to get up off that hammock and go get a frozen drink. And so that's exactly what life does to us. It starts nudging us with longing and discontent so that we have the motivation to change and grow. And the change and the growth happens within ourselves. And so we want to ask ourselves, what are the thought forms, right? What are the thinking patterns that could help change our thoughts, especially if we're having limited thinking, so that we can make an agreement with abundance in this area. So if we're thinking, oh, wow, I don't know anybody in the area, I have no friends. Wow, I'm just alone. we could have thoughts like that and we could continue to nurture that and to agree with that and to find truth that supports that. Or we could start thinking, actually, I have met quite a few people. And when I go out, I'm waving to people. I mean, I might not have a deep relationship with them yet, but what if I started reaching out to people more or asking them to come over? Or I could ask that one person to meet me for coffee. I know that we do have a similarity here, right? And so then that can take me somewhere new. And so abundance is not having a lot of friends. Abundance is acknowledging that we have a lot of friends or acknowledging what we do have, right? So we could sit amongst riches and health and a beautiful home and lots of friends. But if we don't acknowledge what we have and we don't express gratitude for what we have, then we could feel poor inside and we could feel scarce and miserable.
Yeah.
And so it's not even a matter of having a lot. It's about acknowledging what we have. And so we're going to address this a little bit more, but it's about expressing gratitude for what we have and wanting more. So many times we were taught to just be grateful for what you have, maybe even in that tone, right? And there is an ounce of truth in it to be grateful for what we have. But nature, people, right? I don't want to say man, right? Men, women, children, humans, we were created not to be satisfied. We were actually created not to be satisfied. And the reason we can be grateful, but the reason we were created not to be satisfied is because just like our DNA is a spiral, the universe is also a spiral. And so we're always growing and evolving. Just like the hammock, if we were always satisfied, we would just lay on that hammock and we would never move. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
But what's going to happen? Eventually, the sun's going to go down. It's going to start raining. It's going to start thundering. We're going to have to move and get off that hammock or go get that drink or whatever we need to do. Right. And so, just like that example, we're going to need to move and evolve and a change in life. And so, the truth is, too, with the first example I gave, thinking about coming back to people losing jobs right now. So, there's 4 different stages of our relationship with life. The first stage is the to me stage. And that's when we feel like a victim, like we have no power over anything that happens in our life and everything is happening to us. Okay. Then is the by me phase. And that's where we feel like we do have power and we can go get that job and we can get that promotion and we can make money and we can buy that house, right? And we start to feel empowered. And then there's the through me phase. And so that is where we start realizing that there is this energy, this source. And that's what we're talking about today is the law of supply. Right? And so this is where we start co-creating with a power greater than ourselves. And so we still have a very active role in creating our life, but we start tuning in to our intuition and into various laws like the law of supply to co-create. And so that is above the by me phase, right? And so a lot of times as we're moving from the by me to the through me, we may start feeling frustrated because our actions are no longer producing the results that we want. And this is where we want to surrender. We want to start surrendering our will and our power to the supply, to the source, to God. right?
Mhm.
And this is where we really start advancing and where we have quantum leaps and where we start transforming within ourselves if we have this awareness and we're willing to surrender and to let go and let God. And so this is where I really wanted to hone in on the idea of people losing their jobs right now. And so people, when we lose our jobs, right, or when we lose something in our life, the knee jerk reaction could be to panic, right? To panic because we feel like the supply has been cut off. But that is an illusion. Our job is not the source. Life is our source.
Mhm.
And so there could be a few different things going on here. It could be that there's something greater for us to step into and that we've outgrown that situation. It could be that it's time for us to surrender and to recognize that it's time to co create. And that may involve some internal transformation. And it may not necessarily be comfortable, but it is necessary, right? If we want to evolve. And if we don't evolve, we're just going to get caught in a loop. So we want to talk about become that which we seek. And so it's really important that we recognize here, how we respond to a situation, right? I heard once that it's not what happens in our life, it's how we respond, which determines if we are going to be successful or not. And I've used that from instances of when, like, something happens at work and it's an unfortunate situation. It's like, okay, yes, it's an unfortunate situation, but how am I going to respond to this? Because that's going to determine everything,
Mhm.
right? And so that's true too when we lose a job, right? When we lose a job, how we respond to that can allow us to evolve and transform into something greater, or it can get us caught in a loop of the same old thing. And so it's really important that we understand what we seek to have in our life, we must become. And so Wallace Wattles in The Science of Getting Rich encourages us to be a person of increase. And that is that we ensure that every interaction is a transaction of increase. And I know that we talked about this in the past where challenging ourselves to be a person of increase. And one of my favorite examples that I love to use is when I go to the grocery store in the morning. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. I haven't even had my cup of coffee yet. And I just look at everybody and say, good morning. Good morning. Right. I wave to the meat guy, good morning. And they're already up and working. And it's those simple smiles and hellos and conversations at the checkout that I'm being a person of increase and I'm helping myself feel better and I'm helping the other person feel better. And anyone who's witnessing the situation feel better. Right.
That's true.
And so we can be a person of increase in our everyday interactions. And this is where we recognize that this is where transformation happens. It doesn't happen at the top of a mountain at the moment of an amazing sunset. It happens in our everyday situations. And that's why I love to use the grocery store example because we all need to get groceries, right?
Mhm. Yes.
And so Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich said that going the extra mile is one of the 13 principles employed by the wealthiest people in the world. So it said that how we do one thing is how we do everything. And so, for example, I even pay attention, like when I change my clothes, do I just drop? Like I have a closet, right? And I go into my closet and I change my clothes. It's like sometimes I just am tempted to leave that t-shirt on the floor. It's like, who cares? No one else is coming in here. But it does matter because my subconscious is paying attention to what I'm doing. And so that's why it's also said that it's so important to make your bed in the morning. Start your day saying, I'm important and I'm making my bed. Because how we start our day, how we either leave that t-shirt on the floor or choose to pick it up and fold it and put it away in the drawer or hang it up is showing us, do I have self-respect for myself? Do I have self-respect for my room? Do I have pride in my things and how my bedroom looks? Right? Or am I just going to kind of be lazy and just leave things undone? And who cares? It's just me. But it's not just me, it's me, right? I'm important and I deserve to, when I walk into my closet, have everything neat. Or when I come home from my hard day at work, I see my bed is made, right?
Yeah.
And so um, it's so important to ask ourselves, what would it look like for you to become that which you see? So if you want more love, we want to be more love. If you want more abundance, we want to be more generous. If you want more compassion in your life, we want to be compassionate, right? And so it leans into, I know we're talking about the law of supply today, but this also leans into and feeds on the law of circulation, right? So to start the law of circulation, we first want to give. Just like if we want fire, we first have to give wood and
Yeah.
energy, and
Mhm.
then we can get heat and fire. So we always want to be grateful, but never satisfied. So gratitude is the frequency of abundance and supply. And we always want to be grateful. And gratitude is something that I've leaned into. You know, I've been doing self work. I mean, I don't even know. I was trying to put a date on it. I mean, maybe almost 30 years of self improvement and work that I've been doing in my life. Um, I would say anywhere from like 1996 to 1999. And I really, really committed and dove in back in 2004. And gratitude is something that I really started to hear in my practice of 2004. And I heard that gratitude is the perfect antidote for scarcity, for lack, for doubt, for fear, right? Because it helps to shift that mindset. And so when we start with the practice of gratitude, it's great to start making like a list.
Mhm.
And we can make a list of things that we're grateful for every night before we go to bed. Or if we're a morning person, we can make that list in the morning. And it's important as we're making that list each day to keep it fresh. We don't want to keep listing the same things because then it gets stale, right? We want to keep it fresh. And it could be as simple as thank you that I woke up this morning, right? Thank you that I have enough food to feed my family. Thank you that I have more than enough food to feed my family. It
Mhm.
could be a bunch of different things. And a few practices that I've heard from other people that I've incorporated into my life that I can share is Mary Morrissey, one of my mentors, Mary Morrissey. She said that as she is starting to become conscious that she's waking up, she starts listing things that she is grateful for.
Okay.
And she doesn't let her feet hit the floor until she has generated an authentic state of gratitude.
Mhm.
And so that's one of them. And then another thing that has been really helpful for me is making that list in the morning. So usually I just started doing this. Actually, I learned it from one of the people in my podcast. She said that she gets up and the first thing she does when she gets her cup of coffee is she journals for like 20 minutes, just gets everything out of her head. And I usually do like anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, depending on my morning. But at the end, I do list some things that I'm grateful for. And I would say at least 6 to 10 things. And it's so important because as we start getting into the habit of focusing on what we're grateful for, what happens is it becomes natural. And we just start recognizing things that we're grateful for all the time. It's like the more we can practice gratitude, and yes, at first, it's like getting that boulder and starting to push it up that hill, right? It takes work, it takes discipline, it takes commitment. But just like going to the gym every day and or going outside and walking every day or brushing our teeth 2 to 3 times every day or flossing regularly, it's like, you mentioned atomic habits. It's not about making these huge shifts. It's about having these small little corrections in our thinking and then being consistent, disciplined, committed like our life depends on it. Early on in my self improvement, in my changing of my mindset, I heard a statement that I just owned immediately, and it said, "Commit to this program just like someone with cancer would commit to chemotherapy."
Mhm.
Because um a mindset that's not healthy is a disease. It can be a disease. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to commit to it at that level. I'm going to show up every week. I'm going to commit to X amount of times every week. And I'm going to determine it's not that, oh, I'm not going to do it this week because I don't feel like it. Because someone with chemotherapy or with cancer wouldn't say, oh, I don't feel like going to chemotherapy. They would go to chemotherapy, even when they don't feel like doing it. And so when we can have that level of commitment, that's when we are going to start getting that boulder to the top of the hill. And then it just rolls down and it becomes a part of who we are. And that abundance, that flow becomes a normal, natural part of our life. All right. So we don't get to our dream. We actually become the person living in our dream through the transformation of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. And then that leads to our results.